Okay, so hey everybody, how's it going? It's Joe. So I've had some people sort of ask me how to do anime or how to start anime analysis videos, how to start anime analysis itself. Sure. This is sort of a first vlog, I guess, because this is really something that can't be sufficiently described in a video without being too problematic, I would say. So first of all, I would like to mention that I am probably going to be really sort of jittery because this is not something I really do a lot. So I'm not very used to this. So I may have to edit something so I don't end up looking like I'm completely insane, just slightly insane. So first of all, I should mention here is that really the most important thing is just kind of just do it, because it always reminds me of that Samuel Beckett quote, ever try, ever fail, doesn't matter. Try again, fail better. Which is like products are ultimately just analysis are products, and you just put yourself out there, just put them out there, because even if it doesn't do well, which it still could totally do well, but even if it doesn't do well, at the very least you've put it out there, and there's value in that. I'm going to talk about that for a little bit. Second thing is, as always, this is my bias, so I strongly recommend you get advice from several people. Don't try and get it from one or two people. Get it from several people, and oftentimes get it from several people whose analysis you don't agree with, because it gives you sort of a good idea of how other people approach or think about these things, because it's really important to sort of have a more holistic view of how these things are being approached. And the third one here is that this is wildly unscripted, so watch out. But I think if I can sort of condense it into three major overarching subjects, I would say the first one here is always remember that information is narrative. So when you take a look at, for instance, if you look at something, say, like a quote, the words themselves don't actually mean anything. Let's say if you have a quote here, this quote itself actually doesn't mean anything, but it's in the process of you essentially taking the words and then reconceptualizing those words into a sentence, and then you understanding the context, the context that it has a quote, that you've essentially created meaning to it. Now, you've created meaning to it, but what if, for instance, if I said that this quote was said by this person? Oh shit. Now you have this quote with this very particular meaning. So now the context of the quote probably changes. It now becomes this sort of dark, ironic twist if you know much about what happens. But, for instance, if you actually consider that someone who has no idea of who this person is, and they just read this quote, their experience is no less valid. However, their narrative, their understanding of the information is ultimately affected by what they know or have thus experienced with the information they've thus been presented. In other words, the process of deconstruction and then synthesis no longer has that context. And so we have to be very mindful that information is narrative. What you choose to talk about, what you choose to include, and what you choose to omit is very important. And you just have to be really mindful of that. And you also have to be mindful of the people who are talking about these things as well. Because ultimately what I say about these sorts of stories are my narratives and what I sort of value. And so we always have to be focused on that. The second one that I would say is that all information adds to the general discourse pool. Now, when you provide something, don't worry about it being innovative. Don't worry about it being radically innovative. Just provide what you think works, even if it's already been covered by somebody else. So let's provide an example. Now, for instance, if you take a look at like, say, if someone makes a Naruto video and then another person makes another Naruto video, and then these two videos are exactly the same, well, the question now becomes, well, why is the second Naruto video that necessarily worthwhile as a piece if it's exactly the same? Let's put aside the whole probable plagiarism thing if they're so very close that they are literally exactly the same. The second video itself could still be a worthwhile piece, primarily because after a passage of time, we can still think, well, why would this video still be relevant, that it would be worth producing? Or are these arguments still focused and relevant enough that even after all these more episodes have come out, even after more episodes, more information, everything has come out, that we can still contextualize the argument to be very valid for what's being said here? Even after all these other pieces, or even after the zeitgeist, or the paradigm has changed, or the research methods have changed. to come to that conclusion still is still very interesting. And even if the person still has no idea of any of the changes that have occurred, even if they have no idea that any of these positions emerged, why? And that itself is a worthwhile understanding, or a worthwhile point of trying to understand something in an analysis of something that really has already happened. So I would say that don't worry so much about trying to provide this radically innovative argument. Don't worry too much about trying to find something new. Just put something out there. And ultimately, it will add to the larger pool of critical discourse. Whether people agree with it or not is something I can't guarantee that's going to happen. But but I can guarantee at the very least that it will, in some metric, be worthwhile. And it's up to whomever consumes it to really decide how worthwhile it is. So just put it out there. Third one that I want to mention here is do a literature review. Literature reviews are incredibly important because they contextualize and frame different narratives of understanding works that you may not agree with, or you may actively disagree with, but they are still nevertheless very important because they may touch upon particular subjects or ideas in particular ways that could still be worthwhile. And, well, if you take a look at literature reviews, they themselves could be really helpful in framing narratives that you may miss. My favorite movie is the 1977 absurdist Japanese horror film, House by Nobuhiko Obayashi. Now, when I first saw House, I really didn't care much about it. I really thought it was just one of those sort of nondescript but funny, strange comedies. But as I read more about it, as I watched video essays on the House, as I watched more information, as I consumed more information about Obayashi and his background and what he intended for House, it changed my understanding of the film, and the signifiers in the film essentially morphed into something that had a very different resonance with me. It went from essentially this really camp horror story to this viscerally, emotionally bare, and very vulnerable piece. And it was only because that I essentially went off and did a literature review on that movie itself that it essentially changed my understanding of it. And people might say, well, yeah, but that's only because you went off and researched about it. If you had watched it and not done any research about it, then it could have possibly failed as a message of the piece itself. That is a very valid concern. But by going off and doing that literature about it, I have a more holistic understanding of the piece itself, and therefore I have more of an agency as a being who creates his own narrative of the information I'm presented. Essentially, in other words, I have gained more information, and thus I can make a more confirming judgment as to what I value about it. And, well, it was significant enough for me to change my understanding about it. But, I mean, at the end of the day, these points really only matter for anime analysis, or analysis in general. These points really only matter if you decide to do something about it. And I think that really the most important point, aside from these, the most important point to me is just, to quote the contemporary philosopher Shia LaBeouf, just do it. Just do it. But yeah, that's that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys find the video okay. I'm really sorry about that. I will get the video up where I talk about where I'm pretty much just poo-pooing all over my short forms. So I hope thank you for being very patient about that, and let me know if you are okay with the sort of vlog videos now and then, because I'm not going to be doing this on a regular basis because I don't think I really have the topics, or I don't really know if I can really talk about stuff like this on a regular basis, but I hope you guys enjoyed it at the very least, I don't know. I always want to get a good idea of what do you guys think about the points that I posited, and more importantly, what are your for those of you who are interested in doing anime analysis, or those of you who already do anime analysis, I'd love to get your thoughts as to what you think are very important, what you think are very critical to starting these sorts of things. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys later.